Well, I mentioned earlier, new Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is in Tokyo for the Quad meeting with the leaders of Japan, the United States and India. It's all about showing a united front and countering China's influence in the Asia-Pacific region. Earlier today, China's Premier Li congratulated Mr Albanese on his election victory, ending a 2-year diplomatic freeze between Canberra and Beijing. But in a press conference after the official Quad leaders meeting, the Prime Minister maintained the former Morrison government's strong line on China.
I, whenever asked, must have been hundreds of times now, have said that the demands which were placed by China are entirely inappropriate. We reject all of them. We'll determine our own values. We'll determine Australia's future direction. It's China that's changed, not Australia.
Let's bring in Michael Shoebridge from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Thanks for joining us again, Michael. Everything that Anthony Albanese has said publicly and in the public parts of the meetings today is spot on. It's a continuity in Australia's foreign policy. But this letter of congratulations from Premier Li, this would be a bit of a sucker punch coming here, wouldn't it? China's going to sort of throw out a few invitations for the new government to embrace them.
Chris, you're right. This is the bread sprinkled into the goldfish pond to see if there's any bite on it. But it's not the end of the deep freeze. I mean, Beijing was very careful not to actually pick up the phone. They sent a message. There was a bunch of breathless reporting that some kind of direct contact had happened. That didn't happen. When you read the content of this, supposed peace offering from Beijing, it actually just calls on Australia to make the right choices, like the then Australian government did way back in 1972.
But that's why, sorry to interrupt, that's why, as you beautifully put it about the breadcrumbs in the fish tank, that's the idea, isn't it? To see whether Australia might overreact by trying for a personal response to the Chinese ministry or to the ambassador. And so far it seems like the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister have reacted in the right way, in a very, very cold and sober way.
Well, exactly, and that's probably why it's a really good thing they're meeting with their Quad counterparts, because they'll be getting the same message from Prime Minister Kishida. He faces this pressure and these kind of, pretend openings from Beijing every day of the week. Biden's seen it all before, and Modi, of course, he's got an active land border dispute with an aggressive China. So if Penny Wong and Anthony Albanese want to know if they're in good company with this line on China, they're finding that out right now in Tokyo.
Now, for many, many years, there's been talk of strategic ambiguity about Taiwan. That is, if China invaded Taiwan, what would happen? Let's leave it ambiguous so that people aren't very clear about it. But in reality, we've all known that this is the point at which the US and perhaps its allies would need to try and defend Taiwan. In recent days, Joe Biden's been very clear about it. Here's Joe Biden in Tokyo yesterday.
Are you willing to get involved militarily to defend Taiwan if it comes to that?
Yes.
You are?
That's the commitment we made. That's the commitment we made. We are not, look, here's the situation. We agree with a one China policy. We've signed on to it and all the attendant agreements made from there. But the idea that it could be taken by force, just taken by force, is just not appropriate.
Joe Biden being very clear there about America would do. Is that level of clarity a good thing, and has that been predicated by the belligerence of China in recent times?
Well, Chris, he's been criticised by people saying, oh, look at the gold-plated statements of the US administration. They're not as clear as Biden. They're still into strategic ambiguity. But if we want to deter Beijing from doing something as stupid as what Putin's doing in the middle of Ukraine right now and attacking Taiwan, we need to let them know there's resolve to act in Taiwan's defence. This kind of simple message from Biden, despite the State Department's attempts to explain it away, is exactly what Beijing needs to understand. And again, isn't it interesting? Before coming to power, we heard Penny Wong and Mr Albanese say they wanted to talk less about China and talk about the rest of the region. Well, before they even got off the plane, Biden had centred the Quad meeting on China with these remarks about Taiwan.
Absolutely. And the obvious next question to Penny Wong and Anthony Albanese is, if there's American military action against China over Taiwan, does Australia automatically join it? What should their answer be?
Well, I think their answer to Joe Biden and Prime Minister Kishida and Prime Minister Modi is yes. And I don't think there can be a doubt about that. Publicly, I think they've got to be as close to what Biden said as our policy allows. You know, we have a one China policy too, but it's not Beijing's version of it. It's that we recognise Beijing claims the whole of, claims Taiwan as part of its own jurisdiction, but we only recognise that's what they thought. We never agreed.
Yeah, so we would probably try and be a bit more ambiguous, but as you say, try and be as close as possible to what Joe Biden has said. Now, you mentioned China being front and centre and Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong having to deal with that, but Anthony Albanese has been talking about something else while he's been in Tokyo. Have a look.
My government will take ambitious action on climate change and increase our support to partners in the region as they work to address it, including with new finance. We will act in recognition that climate change is the main economic and security challenge for the island countries of the Pacific.
Michael, I guess he's got to say that, doesn't he?
Well, yes, and certainly climate change as it affects island states with not much to them, that's a huge challenge they are very focused on. But I think we can't delude small Pacific states or ourselves by denying the hard power security challenge that Chinese power is now providing to these small Pacific states and to us. That's a direct security challenge, and it'll matter every day of this government.
And if, to the extent that climate change is a problem for them, then it's China's growing emissions that are the problem, growing a third of the world's emissions, not Australia's shrinking 1.2%. But we'll come back to that another time. Thanks for joining us again, Michael.
Thanks very much, Chris.